to the Fiercely Fueled podcast. I'm Dr. Kristen Lander. Today, I want to talk to you all about making use of intra-training nutrition. So a meal that you consume during training. We're going to talk about who would benefit the most from it, what to do, why you should do this, how to do it. And as always, I'll explain the science behind it. So pre and post training nutrition get a lot of love from me. In fact, I have created a free guide for pre and post training nutrition. So if you don't already have that, go get it. You can go to guide.fiercelyfueled.com/podcast to grab that for free. So if you don't know what you should be doing pre and post training nutrition, that's going to walk you through it. Intra-training nutrition can be equally as important depending on the situation. So before I even get into this, I want to just caution you that information like this is where you need to be careful about all of the free content that's out there that you might run into. Not everything written about nutrition for lifters is for the lifter who cares greatly about improving their performance. In fact, the majority of information out there about nutrition for lifters is about improving physique and completely leaves out the performance side. So if you're new to the podcast, just know that almost everything we cover in this podcast has to do with improving performance in lifters. And that's not to say that we can't also improve body composition at the same time, but everything that I talk to you about, unless I'm telling you otherwise, goes through the lens of how is this going to impact our performance as well. So you're going to see articles and social media posts that are going to confuse you and say that peri-workout nutrition, which is the food that you consume around your workout. Peri means surrounding. So pre-workout, post-workout, intra-workout. You're going to see stuff that says that stuff doesn't really matter. And this might be somewhat true if you're just lifting for the health benefits of lifting or potentially weight loss, but it's really an inaccurate narrative for someone who wants to optimize their strength and performance. So just a little word to the wise there. I know there's so much information out there. It's easy to get confused by it. And it even happens to me sometimes. I'm reading an article and I'm like, wait, now who's this? Who's this for? What's this about? So I want to break down for you the reasons why pre, post, and intra-training are important. Pre-training nutrition is all about fueling your training session. It's fueling your upcoming training session. Post-training nutrition is about optimizing your recovery. We want quick and optimal recovery so that you can go hard again the next time. Recovery is very, very, very important to us. And intra-training nutrition is about enhancing the skeletal muscle adaptive response as well as acutely improving your performance. We kind of get two things there. So imagine the effect of being able to add just 5 to 10 more pounds to the bar in today's training session than you expected you were going to be able to, or being able to handle an extra few reps or even an extra set. That's the difference that intra-training nutrition can potentially make for you if you fall into a category of person who could benefit from it. And that's what we're about to get into. So the people that will benefit most from it there's 3 groups of people. The first is someone who trains for 90 minutes or longer. Now, if your training is less than 90 minutes, it doesn't mean that you can't try this. It doesn't mean that it's going to harm you. It's just that research shows us that if your training session is 90 minutes or longer, this is probably a good thing for you to include. Another group of people, so the second group here, are people that train first thing in the morning. And this may potentially be their first meal, or they've had something else very small before going to the gym. So they haven't had a lot of nutrients yet in the day. And then the third group of people is actually the group of people that I fall into. And these are the people who, for whatever reason, usually it's something to do with their schedule, they're going to training without having had the opportunity to get in a meal in a little while. So in my instance, on the days that I'm seeing patients, I'm eating breakfast pretty early in the morning. I'm going and seeing patients for a solid 4 hours with really no break and not an opportunity to consume a meal. I maybe get like little tiny bites here and there, but I'm really not able to get in a meal. So that means then when I leave my clinic and go to the gym, it's potentially been 6 or more hours since I've really eaten a meal. So this is where intra-training nutrition can be really, really important. So let's talk about what to do. What should you consume? Because just eating any old food isn't going to cut it. We need specific rules because we have very specific physiology, the way that our bodies break down food in order for it to become usable energy. So, the key here is that we want carbohydrates and possibly protein. The carbohydrates have to be high glycemic carbohydrates, which means the glycemic index basically tells us how quick our body is going to use up that carbohydrate source. So we want something really high. So high on the list would be dextrose powder, rice cakes, fat-free candy, or even Gatorade would work well here. They give us quick, usable energy. You don't want to use something like fruit in this instance. It has to travel to your small intestines to be turned into usable energy. So by the time that already happens, you're home from the gym. So it's great. Like fruit gives us energy. I love fruit. We should all be eating fruit, but not during training. It's really not going to help you when you need it most. And not even dried fruit. So if you're listening to this, be like, yeah, but I'm just going to eat dates because they're super, super sweet and sugary, and that's got to be high glycemic. Wrong. They're not. Dates are actually low on the glycemic index. So they're actually quite low. They're 42 out of 100. So you don't want to have either fresh fruit or dried fruit during training. It's not that it's going to harm you in any fashion. It's just not going to do what you're asking it to do. Unfortunately, we can't break the laws of biochemistry and physiology. So high glycemic carbohydrates, or you could think of them as quick digesting sugars, is the way to go here. Now, I mentioned a minute ago, possibly protein. So here's the deal with putting protein in this meal. Recent studies show that protein ingestion before and during exercise increases muscle protein synthesis rates during resistance training. So that's pretty cool. Like we all want to increase muscle protein synthesis, growing muscle, right? It also appears to enhance the skeletal muscle adaptive response and has been suggested to acutely improve performance capacity. So pretty cool there. Now, the way that you want to utilize this, the way that you want to decide, should you have protein in that meal or not have protein in that meal, because I don't always do it that way, comes down to when did you eat your last meal? So if you're the person who's utilizing intra-training nutrition, intra-training nutrients, because your training session is long, but you've already gotten in a lot of meals already that day, then you maybe don't need to put protein in that meal. So you can leave that up to yourself. You can try it out, see what works best for you. But if you're going to use protein, go for a hydrolyzed whey isolate. That is going to be very quick digesting. So just like the carbohydrates, we want something that our body can utilize pretty quickly. If you don't consume animal products, that's okay. I have an idea for you. And this is actually what I use when I'm not utilizing whey, which is a 45%, 55% blend of pea and rice protein. So 45% pea protein, 55% rice protein. It has a little bit better digestibility than soy. It's not as good as whey. I'm just going to tell you that in terms of its effects on muscle protein synthesis and its ability to be quick digesting, but it's pretty darn good. And I've been happy with the results I've used from that. So don't feel like if you can't consume whey, don't feel like you're going to miss out. That's a really good option there. And it's a little bit better than soy protein. So carbohydrates, possibly protein. So now let's talk about amounts, right? In general, I would start with about 30 to 35 grams worth of carbohydrates and then a serving of protein. So somewhere between 20 to 40 grams of protein. I would go with just your usual bolus of protein, whatever amount you normally consume in a meal. That's what I would put in your intra-training shake. So if you're going to do dextrose plus protein, just throw it all in a shaker bottle, mix it up, drink it. I would start about, depending on your purpose. If you're like me and you're getting to the gym and you haven't had much to eat, I would consume about half of that during while you're warming up and getting ready to lift. And then the second half of that during the first half of your training. If you're just using this to help you get through these long training sessions, I know a lot of our athletes within Fiercely Fueled have 2, 3, even 4-hour long training sessions. So they absolutely need fuel during that period of time. So if that's you, what I would suggest doing is, whether you're utilizing the dextrose alone or dextrose plus protein, or rice cakes, fat-free candy, just have sips or bites in between sets throughout your training session. So I think that's the best way to do that. So the next thing that I really want to talk about is the next question that always comes up when I'm talking to an athlete about how to do this. They're like, wait, hold up. Okay, so I got your guide and I've got my pre-training meal dialed in. I've got my post-training meal dialed in. And now I'm going to add intra-training. And this is just more calories. It's going to take away from the rest of my day. Yes and no. So research shows us that if you finish training within 2 hours of eating, a post-training meal isn't really of that much importance. Isn't that kind of shocking? I was shocked to hear that, but also relieved, and it makes sense. So most of us that care about performance are eating not necessarily right before the gym, right? We're maybe eating an hour, possibly even 2 hours before the gym. And then going into a training session that's potentially 2.5 hours long. So in that instance, we have to have a post-training meal, right? But if you're adding intra-training into that, you're probably going to fall within that finishing training within 2 hours of eating. So you can subtract the protein and the carbohydrates from your intra-training meal off of your post-training meal. So if you were supposed to have 25 grams of protein in your post-training meal and 60 grams of carbohydrates in that meal as well, and you had all of that protein in your intra-training meal, then your post-training meal, you don't need to have protein. And then if you had 30 intra-training and you need 60 post-training, you just need another 30 grams of carbohydrates in that post-training meal. So you can just subtract that so that you don't feel like you're having to starve yourself outside of training. Definitely not a fan of that. So hopefully that has helped you clear up some confusion, some misconceptions around intra-training nutrition, and decide if that is beneficial for you. So remember, if you don't have my pre and post training meals guide, go grab it. It's free. Go to guide.fiercelyfueled.com/podcast to get it. And I will see you guys at the next episode. Thanks for joining me. If you like the show, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my free email newsletter at guide.fiercelyfueled.com/podcast. In addition to updates, articles, and behind the scenes tips from my team and I, my email newsletter subscribers also get my pre and post training meals guide to help you position yourself to get stronger faster than you ever thought possible. You can get it all for free at guide.fiercelyfueled.com/podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Fiercely Fueled Nutrition. And lastly, this show is meant to make the strength world a better, stronger, and healthier place. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the show.